He's a good owner.
Mm.
All right, we can probably start about now. I'll pull up. Let me think of a good way to start this. Good question to start. All right, I think this is probably pretty good for some of the younger people in the audience who are just starting. Uh, how do you find yourself practicing, just in general during a normal practice session, and how does that change if your practice session gets shortened for whatever reason? Like if you have to sort of really compress what you're doing, how would you handle that?
Sure. Well, the compression has become the norm for me.
Yeah.
Um, just, because life gets in the way. And so I think it's good to have this in mind because when you're in school and especially in high school or college, if you're a music major, when I was an undergrad and even masters too, but especially in my undergrad, I just had like a sea of time to
Yeah.
practice and I took full advantage of it. Um, Now, if I get an hour or maybe two, if I'm lucky, a day, that's like a good day, excuse me. So yeah, I think like when the time gets compressed, I really just focus on what I call like the survival things, which are first, and the thing that I find to be just the most important thing is just working on your tone. So the first thing I do when I play is just long tones. And various different types of long tones and overtones. And also just taking that time after I'm done with doing a few different long tone exercises, just playing some melodies and playing anything that I feel like lets me just focus more on sound and getting into my sound and feeling the music through my tone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, just to like basically pick up the horn, put air through it, have fun. Like if I have even 15 minutes, that's what I'm going to do. After the tone comes technique. So then, okay, let's say I have a half hour. I'll start getting into just getting my fingers to move. This is just all survival practice, just strengthening the connection between my neurons and my fingers. So that way, if I hear something, I'm more likely to execute it and I feel better on the horn when I have to go play and later that night or something. It just helps me feel looser and more attached to the actual instrument. So yeah, those are generally the things that I do. If I then have a little bit more time, like that's the thing, much else other than like tone and technique. For me, I really feel like I need a lot of time to just like have open and practice. Like if I'm gonna work on a transcription or work on learning a tune or getting into composing or anything more involved, like I almost don't want to even get started on that if I know I only have like 10 or 15 minutes. So instead, what I'll do for, excuse me, like the remainder of the time is just pick a few tunes or take like a tune like Cherokee and work it in all 12 keys,
Yeah.
right? Throw on a metronome, play with the metronome, just play a tune by myself or with the metronome and take it through a few keys. That's almost a daily thing is I'll take like a blues or Donnelly or Cherokee, and something like that. The rhythm changes and try playing it in all 12 keys. Or maybe play it in all 12 keys and then be like, oh man, like key of A flat really is just not feeling very good right now. Let me go nice and slow and just try to connect some ideas slowly through that key. So then I'll spend the next 10, 15 minutes doing that. Um, but yeah, I like to think of it as survival practice. I'm not practicing necessarily with the idea of I'm going to accomplish some new boundary in my practice time today if I have 30 minutes. But I'm just going to generally like maintain
Yeah.
maintenance practice. Now, I know that a lot of people have jobs and busy lives, and they still want to be able to practice and make progress, even in that short amount of time. So if that's your case, then I think you need to actually so one thing that I did a lot, I haven't done it actually as much recently, is I'll keep a practice log and I'll just write down like the things that I know I want to get at. So if I only have a half hour, okay, maybe I'll then spend 5 minutes on long tones, 5 minutes on technique, and then I'll spend the remainder, the last 20 minutes on actually trying to chip away at a larger topic like a transcription or learning a tune. I'm using that small amount of time and still doing a little bit of maintenance and upkeep, and then the rest is actual all progress.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to keep a log because it's just your sort of your own mental check-in with yourself periodically.
Yeah.
You can, I think it's very good that you evaluate yourself, and you ask yourself, man, like what feels good? What do I feel like I still need to work on? What can I do better at? And then you make a point to address that somewhere in your practice routine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that generally answers the question. You can break it down a lot more specifically depending on exactly what you're working on. But in a more general sense, that's sort of the answer.
Okay. I think this is sort of tangentially related to that. How do you balance having, a sort of a kid and a family with the lifestyle of a like professional musician and being able to get stuff done?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard. I'm working on figuring that out at the moment. But yeah, like when my daughter was first born, she just turned 4. Like, it's just 24/7 attention,
Yeah.
So a lot of it is just a give and take with scheduling everything well. It's sort of what I was saying about just being really organized and knowing, okay, like I have this much time today, so I'm going to capitalize on the whatever time I have. That might be 10 minutes. I used to practice, like she would go when she was really young, I'd put her in the crib and I would just play, not loud, play super soft, but I would just like play scale exercises and sit right next to her crib. Just, like barely putting air through the horn because I didn't want to hurt her ears or
Yeah.
scare her or make her cry. But just something just to like feel like I was connected to the horn in some way. It's a little easier now because she's in school and so I have like a solid 6 hour chunk, or not quite 6 hours, because I have to leave early to get her.
Yeah.
But so I have a little more time to actually like divvy every single day towards maybe
Yeah.
practicing
Yeah.
you know but yeah, and also communicating with your partner, like, hey, are you going to be home? Can you watch her? Can you pick her up? Do I have the time to do this? And it's all just being really, I think the one thing that I wish I was better at, before I had a kid and before I became an adult, is time management. I took that for granted big time when I was in school.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's fine. Like, like now I'm a lot better at like, okay, I have 15 minutes. Like, I'm gonna capitalize on this small amount of time.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I have actually that connects to this. As a professional, what changes would you have made to your practice routine when you were younger if you had like the opportunity to go back in time?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so it's mostly just that. Like, I took for granted the fact that I had all this time. So I definitely spent a lot more time in the practice room, just sort of like playing and having fun, which I guess I don't fully regret that because I think that's really important to do too. But yeah, I think I could have been a little bit more regimented or focused at times with making sure that, okay, I accomplished this, I accomplished that. Um, I wish I got a little bit more heavily into like flute and clarinet when I was in college. I was really not fully a regret because I spent that time on the saxophone and learning tunes, and you know, um, it's just what I chose to focus on and what I was inspired to do.
Yeah.
So but now I guess being in New York City and being in the real world, there is and still is catch up that I'm doing in other areas of the practice.
Yeah.
To, oh man, I have this really hard flute part, or I have this clarinet part that's really tough, and I don't want to crash and burn on the recording session.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever it is, but it's hard. There's so much music. It's so hard to get to it all. So I think we all just have to do our best to still responsibly take care of what we need to take care of, and then also make sure that we work on what inspires us that we like to do, so that way we feel motivated and um, because there's so much more than just playing jazz or bebop, which is amazing, and I love that with all of my heart. But there's so much more music than that in the
Yeah.
world. And I didn't even deal with any of that until I graduated and somebody called me for an R&B gig. And I was like, I have no clue what to even do right now. Like, how is that possible? And so a lot of that stuff was just trial by fire. And that's okay. That was a good learning experience. But, I guess I wish I dealt with more different styles of music too. It was very, very jazz focused and for better or worse.
All right. This connects into it. This is a question from Jones. Coltrane often spoke about his influence both spiritually and musically from other cultures, musics, notably Indian music and 12-tone music. What would you say your big influences are from other forms of music in your playing or other cultures, if there are any?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think now I listen to a lot of different types of music, and I think world music and music from other cultures has very deeply penetrated all styles. I didn't grow up listening to anything particularly like world musicy. I grew up listening to like rock music.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Like I loved the Red Hot Chili Peppers and the Offspring, Pearl Jam, Nirvana. That's like I was a kid in the 90s,
Yeah.
so like all of that kind of stuff I grew up listening to and I loved it. And I had like a little Walkman tape player and headphones and I'd walk around with it like clipped to my belt.
Yeah.
Um so that's what I loved. And when I started learning the saxophone and learning jazz, and I got really into that too, but they were like separate things.
Yeah.
It's like one was this music and the other one was like school music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I didn't, it took a really long time to realize that, like, no, it can be like this, it's all music is music, there's only 12 notes. There's only so many different things you can do to put it together. It's just about the instruments and the feel and everything, So I think I'm still influenced by like the energy and the vibe and the feeling and the passion, I guess, like that comes out from that type of music.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, since then I've checked out, I don't know, so much stuff. I love like the spirituality in like Indian music, for instance,
Yeah.
and it clearly penetrates like John Coltrane's music, like you were mentioning,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so much. I mean, yeah, geez, klezmer, Eastern European music,
Yeah.
yeah, traditional Latin music, African music,
Yeah.
everything. It's incredible. Like there's so much stuff, and you really hear, when you start checking out all the different types of music, I feel like it becomes a lot easier to be aware of how it evolved over time and then became what it is and how it penetrated jazz or whatever else,
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess I'm influenced to varying degrees by all varying styles, but I've certainly listened to a lot of different stuff
Yeah.
and it's affected me in some way,
Yeah.
Also, a lot of gigs I do now are not jazz, like so, you know, um that was a big learning experience too, is like for instance, like winding up on some R&B gig and then I would ask like someone else on the band, like, man, like, I feel like I'm just such a jazz guy. Like, how do I get into this stuff?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, how did you get into jazz? You checked out the people who played that, like the legends of that music. You got that sound in your ears. You learned that vocabulary and that repertoire, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. There's every style of music has its own repertoire and its own, masters that defined the style and the people today there that are putting their own take on all of that, and there's a lineage, so I think, you can do that type of digging for any style of music. It's not just jazz,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Give me just a second. Let me pick something good. This is tangentially connected. Who are some saxophone players that you think are not as respected or not given enough attention as they should? And could you maybe give an example from one from like the classic era and one from now?
Oh yeah. Okay. So I think, I mean, there's so many. It's tough to say because in the days of the internet, like it's a lot easier for people to be known. So I never know like who might know who.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's some awesome friends of mine that just play their asses off that I feel like don't get as much attention as they deserve. Just a few that come to mind. One of my best buddies, who is the other alto player in my masters at Manhattan School of Music with me, Nick Biello.
Yeah.
He's a freak show. Um, Alex Larray also was at Manhattan School of Music with me. Um, Matt Morantz. Just three guys that come to mind, just off the top of my head, that are in New York playing that are just absolutely incredible. Um, that I feel like, should they could be doing anything.
Yeah.
They're just at the very top, you know.
I don't know if
Um,
you know this. Alex Ray actually went to UNF for his undergrad.
well, that's
Yeah,
right. I did know.
he came down here for the Bunky Green celebration and played one of those extremely difficult Bunky compositions. It was really cool.
Hmm.
He's a really unique player. I've really never heard anybody who sounds quite like him.
Yeah, he really is incredible. Yeah, I mean, there's so many more. Another great, a Long Island contemporary of mine, Alejandro Aviles, is also absolutely just so incredible, and also an amazing flute player, clarinet player, plays alto and tenor, piccolo, everything, and really has his own unique um, style and approach.
Yeah,
Also, in the same way as Leray, I like more of a reserved type of player, I would say, but incredible. The intensity of his ideas is still there, even though he's not beating you over the head with it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, as far as older guys, um, one that's still alive, who I view as possibly the best lead alto player that has ever lived, and definitely in the conversation as like top five for sure, at least, is Bobby Porcelli. He's in his 80s now, and he's a huge influence on me in general, everything I do, but specifically his sound and lead playing. He played with Tito Puente for
Yeah,
like over
he, yeah,
30 years. So he kind of got well known just in that whole side of things. But he has such an authoritative and unique way of just phrasing and leading the saxophone section and putting a vibe on every single note, making sure that every single phrase has direction to it and fulfills its purpose musically. Backgrounds are soft, but he still shapes them dynamically so well. Like there's just so much nuance. Um, so yeah, Bobby Porcelli
yeah,
is one of the masters. Also, not still alive is Frank Strozier, who not a lot of people talk about. Um, Totally incredible. Also like one of these just like huge alto sounds, super soulful. A lot of people don't really mention him, but he belongs up there with the legends
hmm,
too. A lot of people don't talk about Earl Bostic, like ultra funky, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure more would come to mind, but there's just a few. I think. All right, so I feel a few ways about it because some of my main influences. Everybody asks me, "Oh, who's my main influences?" And like the first two words always like Cannonball and Train for me.
yeah,
Obviously, Bird too, and Joe Henderson. But like, I feel like it's a lot more common when you hear people say those names.
yeah,
Like those are everybody loves those guys. I'm not unique in saying those are my top. you know, um, but I think it's also important that like we all do enough digging to find the different players that whose styles speak to us. Just because a lot of people don't talk about them doesn't make what they did any less credible.
yeah,
Eddie Harris is another example. People don't talk about Eddie Harris that much. You know, Eddie Harris is one of my biggest influences, man. I mean, even I don't think I really play like him, but man, like he inspires the shit out of me. Like really just like so funky in his sound
yeah,
and his ideas and the way he plays intervallically and motivically. Man, like yeah, Eddie Harris. So anyway, there's a few names for you, but I think we all owe it to ourselves to do the digging and like find out who's on this album and who's on that album. That's the cool thing about I'm just old enough that I grew up with CDs, right? Where
yeah,
like I still had the liner notes and I was checking out where was this album recorded? Who played on this album? Oh wow, look at this. Oh, that person also played on this album.
yeah,
That's cool. Oh, this was only recorded 2 years. You know what I mean? That was like kind of one of the coolest things about liner notes is that it really helped you establish connections and see who played with who and where they played and when, that you don't really get, or you can still look it up, but you don't get that nearly as easily when you just stream music on Spotify or
yeah.
Apple Music. And it's too bad, because that information is all so interesting. Like when you hear a saxophone player that you've never heard before, it sounds great on this album. It's a lot harder to even find out um who that is, for
Yeah,
instance,
yeah,
whereas you can just
yeah.
literally, I still remember like the way that like CD liner notes smell. They have a certain smell. And that sounds crazy, but
No,
like
I
it
get you.
smells fresh, like interesting plasticky smell that I can think of right now. Like I would always like relate that to like the happiness of opening up a new CD and reading about
Yeah,
who recorded, and being super excited to find out all that info.
yeah. Actually, I'm trying to find one of my. I have a few CDs, and I was going to see if I could recognize the smell that you were talking about, but I don't know where Ryan's
It's a
is.
crazy thing to say, but smell is very tied to
Yeah, it
memory,
is. It is.
so
Yeah,
it's just
I
a good memory.
yeah. This is from another Discord member. How did you arrive at the sound that you play with? Because it's pretty unique amongst, I think, modern alto players.
Oh well, thank you. I'm flattered that anybody thinks that. I don't know. I guess I never. When you go to school, everyone says, it's about more than just learning the vocabulary. You have to put it together in your own way and establish your own voice.
Yeah,
Or you need to have your own voice, play with your own voice. You know, um, I thought about that a lot, but I didn't do a whole lot intentionally to find it. I always believed that we already have our own voice. Just like I speak and I can only sound this funny kind of nasal way that I sound. You know what I mean? Like we all sound like ourselves. So
yeah,
I think there's a difference between learning the vocabulary and learning the language and getting so comfortable with it that then you can start embellishing it and doing your own things with it.
yeah,
And I think a lot of students sometimes worry about their own voice when really you just need to get more comfortable with the language itself. Just get the sound of it more in your ears. Get comfortable with it. I think a lot of the natural variations and what will wind up being you about it comes naturally. Just
yeah,
once you get so comfortable with, even just take one easy phrase, for example. You learn one easy 2/5 phrase, right? First, you have to just figure out what the notes are. Then maybe find a way or a tune where you can just play it, just verbatim, like plug and play, right? I'm not saying that's
yeah,
the end all be all. Far from it, but you have to just get a feel for where it belongs and how it will sound in context without varying it at all. And get comfortable with that enough so that way you can start to just sort of hear it naturally when you go to play. I think in time and with enough repetition and enough driving yourself crazy and practice and all that, um, a lot of these natural variations start to happen because you hear it, you get so comfortable with it that you start to say, oh, what if I add this note to it? What if I change this note? What if I, instead of making the approach a whole step, now it's a half step into whatever, any little thing like that. And I think so. We're looking at that in relation to one phrase, but it actually also kind of applies to the overall picture of you playing when you get comfortable enough with improvising and comfortable enough with getting a consistent sound over the whole range of the horn. The you aspect of it, for me, I think it just comes in naturally. Um, what I think the important thing is kind of what I was saying about make sure that you find the music that inspires you, right? Like
yeah,
even when it's so funny, people talk about like learning jazz repertoire, and sure, there's like a list of a lot of songs that like you're sort of expected to know. Like if you walk into a session and someone calls Autumn Leaves and you say, "Oh, I don't know that one," people are going to be like, really?
mm,
Like, so okay, so there's some songs that like you're required to know, and anybody listening that doesn't know that song right now, that's also okay. But it's just that's like, for example, like part of like I would say the main repertoire. But I think it's so important to also like if you hear a jazz tune that you really like, then you should definitely learn that because you're going to be that much more likely to well, first of all, remember a
yeah,
song that you like versus remember a song that you don't like. And also you're going to play better on a song that you like. So this individuality aspect of it is so important, even just with like finding what you like and learning that. Um and I don't mean to say that as far as like saying, oh well, I don't like this song, so I'm not gonna learn it. I know I'm supposed to learn it from my class, but I'm not gonna learn it. No, 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 no. Be positive, have an open mind, still do the work, and still be cool, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there's also the factor of you know, you might not like something immediately. Like for instance, the first time I heard Wayne Shorter, I was sort of like, "Whoa, what? I don't get this," you know?
Yeah.
Um, and as I learned more and I studied him more, now it's like I can't believe I ever didn't like it. But
Yeah.
some things, they come to you more in time and your taste changes too.
Yeah.
So I think having an open mind, being positive, identifying what you like, and just letting the process happen. For me, that's like whatever individual voice I have, that it really had no more intention other than just basically following those things, you know.
Yeah.
I think some people maybe do try more specifically to find something that they want to have in their playing,
Yeah.
and I think that's awesome. I've never a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I talked to a lot of saxophone players also in my generation, and some people are more opinionated. Like, oh, I don't like this. I really like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, that's cool. Like, I've always just sort of taken it at face value, and said, oh wow, that's cool. It could be that way, Not, I don't like that. Just that there's another option that you
Yeah.
could go in that direction.
Yeah.
Whoa, I could go all the way down that road too. Damn, I didn't even know that road existed.
Yeah.
So the open mindedness of it, I think, is so important.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. I've always found the what you said to be a little frustrating amongst especially some of my peers. It's definitely a thing. I think at the college level it exists a lot just because of a lack of sometimes musical maturity, you know? I say this
Yeah,
all
I don't I don't understand. Like, it's music.
yeah.
Like, it's just music. If you like it, that's all you need. It's meant to be heard and appreciated. That's it.
Yeah.
So someone doesn't like something, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't if someone tells me they don't like somebody or like some type of music or a player, okay, that's cool. That's great. I respect their opinion, because
Yeah.
we all have our own personal opinions as far as what we like and what we don't. It doesn't affect me in any way. They're not telling me that I can't like it.
Yeah.
If anything, it would make for a fun conversation. An interesting one. Like, oh, really? So, what is it about it? Oh, that's interesting. Wow, cool. I
Yeah.
never looked at it that way. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But for me, I was never like, yeah, I was just sort of like, I don't know. I just sort of took it at face value a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. I'm gonna change up the conversation topic a little bit to some of like I guess your own professional ventures. If you could like name a particular gig that you've done that's been super memorable to you, what would it be? I know that's a hard one because I'm sure you've done a lot of memorable gigs, but if you could narrow it down.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I could think of two that
Okay.
are make for fun. Well, one makes for a very fun story. Um, I there was one really really great gig. It was one of the first big gigs I ever did when I graduated school. Because I did my undergrad at SUNY Purchase, and John Faddis was one of the teachers there. So he taught jazz repertoire,
Mhm.
which kind of encompassed learning tunes and also transcriptions and memorizing them and playing them in front of him and the whole class. Um, so he was one of my teachers, and when I graduated, he had this. Okay, so there was the Carnegie Hall Jazz Band, which was funded by Carnegie Hall. After a while, that they kind of ditched the band, but John Faddis, who was the director, still ran it, and he had the charts. So he started doing some gigs under the name John Faddis Jazz Orchestra, and there were new charts too, and we did a lot of that repertoire. It's basically the same band, and he called me to sub on some of those gigs. One of which was the Bermuda Jazz Festival. So I got to fly down with Faddis and the whole orchestra. Steve Wilson played lead alto. I played second. I think Ralph Olamo was sitting on the other side of me. I was just like, just out of college, like, oh my God, what am
Yeah,
I
yeah.
doing here? I don't here. So cool. And so we got down to Bermuda and we're playing. There's like 1,000 something people in the audience, which for me at the time was the biggest audience I had ever played for. Um, and just in the middle of the gig, Faddis just turns to me on the mic. He goes, Andrew, come up here for a second. So I'm like, what? Oh my god. Oh my god. So then I'm standing next to him. I'm just in front of all like thousand something people, and he's like, um, how many single ladies are there in the audience? And I'm just like, oh no, oh, and a bunch of people raise their hand, and he's like, well, Andrew's gonna play a ballad for all the single women here in the house, and maybe if you find it moving, you can talk to him
Oh my
afterwards.
god.
So I'm like, oh, ridiculously embarrassed, like, how are you doing this to me? um, and in the rhythm section it was Rini Rosnes on piano, Todd Coolman on bass, and John Riley on drums. So like, pretty amazing rhythm section
Yeah.
of just like these people who I'm massively intimidated by, just
Yeah.
just behind me. And he's like, "Why don't you go ahead? What's a ballad you'd like to play?" So I don't know. So I picked Polka Dots and Moonbeams and played it, and it was incredible. I was super nervous. Um, and yeah. Anyway, that was that. Actually went well. But that was definitely a very memorable experience for me, just being that caught off guard and put on the spot and having to deal. And the audience
Yeah.
obviously was hip. I think everybody was laughing and thought it was funny, and all the cats in the band were all laughing
Yeah.
too. And
I
you
have
know,
I have to ask, did any single ladies come up to you after the show?
no, I was too embarrassed. I honestly, I packed up, and I got out of there, which I'm an idiot for doing that. That my mind frame at the time. I was like, I need to get out of here. I'm so embarrassed.
Just got to get this
Um,
over
I wasn't single at the time either,
with.
so I guess I was also.
Good
Um,
instincts. Good instincts.
yeah, but it was really funny, and I could tell John just he enjoyed the hell out of doing it.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was actually awesome, and it was just so cool to have done that. Like, holy shit, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, that was one. The other one was more recently, and it was another one of my favorite gigs because we played at the 8-Bit Big Band at this festival called MagFest.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, almost a year ago now, which stands for Music and Games Fest. It's like a video game music festival. And there must have been like 4,000 people in the audience, all going absolutely nuts for a big band.
Yeah.
So just in a more like that, that's it. It was just so incredible to like, I'm playing a big band gig right now. How are there so many people out here?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, the longer I could think of more, but those are just two examples. I could go on
I thought
more. Maybe.
the Magfest was so special. I wasn't there, obviously. Actually, fun fact, I wanted to go, but I think we had a gig that would have prevented me from driving up to Massachusetts. But
Oh,
I saw the videos, and it was so awesome.
it was great.
Yeah, and all the artists you got Insane in the Rain. You had a bunch of saxophone players, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, right. Carlos was a guest with us,
Yep.
too. I can't even. We've done so many gigs. There have been so many people, and there's so many people in the band. I can't even like keep straight in my head
Yeah.
who was on what gig. But I do remember it being. I remember Carlos was there for
Yeah.
sure, and I remember it being. Oh yeah, that's right. And Dave Pollock played
Yeah,
with me
That
also
was the one.
in the session too, which is really cool. Like, but maybe no, the second time we ever played together, we did one other random gig where we met each other
Hmm.
a few years back too. But this time we had known each other and we talked. He's a buddy of mine. And so we were talking online periodically too. So when I heard he was on the gig, I was like, bro, you know.
Yeah. He's great.
So yeah, that was also very cool about it.
Yeah. That 8-Bit Big Band gig in Miami was another thing. I was shocked to just see so many people there for big band music. It was really cool. Also to have
Yeah,
an entire audience of people singing the Mario Kart lick at you is kind of insane. It's,
it's incredible.
it's
It's incredible and awesome, and a direction that I never would have thought I ever would have, or at least that I would have been involved with musically. I never would have thought that could have happened. They were just separate worlds in my mind. So when I realized, I didn't know that the whole world of video game music, um, well, obviously it existed because there's music in video games, but that there was a thing for the live portion of it, and not until 8-Bit Big Band was started, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is really a thing. Holy shit, where have I been? you know?
I'm curious, how was the process of like the creation of the 8-Bit Big Band? How did Charlie go about starting that?
Yeah. Um, Hey dude, so I have this idea in mind. I really like video game music. You want to come record some songs? Yeah, sounds fun.
That simple?
That was it.
Wow.
Yeah, I met Charlie in 2013 on this one gig that I'm really happy I did. um, Basically, my buddy, who's a phenomenal bass player named Raviv Markowitz, he had this little gig. It was at Lincoln Center, but not like little gig at Lincoln Center. It was in like the lobby. They had
Mhm.
basically like in between shows, or like right before the main show started, and also and like the intermission. They would have like usually like a student band of like the Juilliard kids play, you know. So there's just some music happening in the lobby. It was called the Atrium at that time, like the Atrium gig. So at this point, like Raviv got booked to call his own band, and he asked me to do it. And he also had Steve Feifke on piano, who I didn't know either. And then Raviv, something came up and he couldn't make the gig anymore, so he got Charlie to sub um, on bass. And so he was like, "Yeah, man, I don't know if you know these guys, but um, I'm not going to be there. But you're, of course, like you should still totally play." And I was like, "Yeah, of course, I'm going to go play. Like, what's great, you know." And so I'm going to this free gig, right? Because didn't pay any money; it was just tips.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Oh, cool! I'm going to meet some dude named Stephen Feifke and Charlie Rosen." And so I just played standards with them in the lobby. And like musically, it was amazing. And they were super cool and down to earth and nice. And so we hit it off on this gig and exchanged phone numbers. And, you know, it's like that's literally how I met and became friends with both Stephen Feifke and Charlie Rosen, who to this day are two like really awesome musical associates, I would say, and also certainly more than that, friends, you know. So I'm really happy that I did that. And it just goes to show you, like, man, like, if you're free and you have nothing else to do, and of course, you're not being, like, taken advantage of, and, you know,
Yeah.
um, go play. Like, that's what we're here to do. You never know what it might lead to, you know? So sort of the same thing with like this positive attitude, like be positive. I'm not saying like let yourself be taken advantage of if someone's asking you to do a gig that pays not enough money or they're asking too much of you. That's a whole other thing. But like this was a gig for my friend that I knew was going to be on a high level musically. It was short. It was going to be a fun hang. I had nothing else to do, of course. And I'm so glad I did it, you know? Okay, anyway, that's a tangent. I know you asked me how the 8-bit big band started. So I stayed in touch with Charlie, and he had this other big band called the Broadway Big Band, which I guess is still a thing, but he doesn't play with it as much. Obviously, playing big band covers. It's like a musical review, big band wise, of various different Broadway songs.
Yeah.
So he was doing that for a bit, and playing at this spot in Midtown called 54 Below. It was getting really big. Like a lot of people were coming to the show. It was getting sold out. And it became a lot of cast in New York, especially in like around my age that were all started like working together on a lot of things. So the band sort of had a overall rapport. And then yeah, just this one day he just called everybody. I'm not exactly, so you'd have to ask him where the actual idea spurred from. But for me, it was just like, yeah, dude, I had this idea to like try doing a big band full of video game music. Would you be down? And I'm like, yeah, I'd be down for sure, you know.
What?
And that's basically how it happened. Yeah.
Nice. What are some of the like? If you could name maybe some of the charts that you've played with the 8-bit, like if you had to pick maybe a favorite or two, what would they be?
Oh man, there's so many good ones. They're all amazing. So he just dropped the record like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I would say from that, man, this one, Pollyanna, it's called,
Mm-hmm.
um, is a huge one. I also love Mabe Village, the slow, sort of like Neil Hefti, Little Darlin', Count Basie
Mm-hmm.
swing. Um, yeah, I love Song of Storms. I think that's so awesome. I think Patrick sounds incredible on that. I remember he tracked his alto solo before the whole band recorded.
Yeah.
So we got we got to the studio and the solo was already recorded and a few cats were like, "Oh, Andrew, you already did the solo?" Like they knew it wasn't me. They were just messing around. And I was
Oh.
like, "No, no." Um, and but yeah, man, sounds ridiculous. He's
Yeah.
one of my favorite alpha players, like alive. He's so incredible. That's another one of my favorites. I just think it's so cool. We also did one featuring the cat from Dirty Loops, Jonah. That's on the album. We did another one with Lawrence. The names are escaping me right now because I need to go back to bed. I also, yeah, I love Bob on Battlefield. Super classic. We have a Tetris theme one which we haven't played in a minute, which is amazingly cool. Gerudo Valley. Um, yeah, I don't know. Every single arrangement is my favorite one.
Okay.
They're all amazing. Like that's the coolest thing is like we have the set list, right? And then we finish one song and I flip to the next one and I'm instantly like, oh yeah, this one. There's not like a single one. I'm like, oh great, here we go. Like not even remotely like that. I'm excited about every single one.
Mm. I wow, that's pretty impressive because I know in my big band that we're doing in college, most of the songs I'm very excited about, and then we get to some chart and I'm just like, God damn it, not again. I forgot this is my folder, and it's the hell, it's hell, it's Stan Kenton, everything is unison, and it's a march for some reason, and I'm just like, ugh, not again.
Yeah, that happens,
Yeah,
but it doesn't happen on this gig. Not at least not for me. They're all really, really fun. And Charlie is such an amazing like arranger orchestrator that it like all the parts and there's some hard parts like
yeah,
you like there's technically some very hard to execute things, but they're all very appropriate on the instrument. Like it's all stuff that like the role of the part makes perfect sense. Like this is definitely a part that I should be playing, and like without even having played the arrangement before, it's very easy to tell, like just when you sight read the songs, like what role your part has.
yeah,
Like this belongs here, it belongs at this volume, and it's functioning in this way. He's just like they're immaculate. They're immaculately written.
yeah,
And I think that's why the band is able. Not that everybody isn't a really good reader because they all are, but that's why we just get into the studio and just like record them down. Like we don't rehearse. We don't rehearse before we go into the studio.
yeah,
He sends a Dropbox a few days before, and we just track it in the studio. It's a testament to how awesome his arrangements are and how well written they are, and also to the high level of musicians that are in the band, basically that can just read that and
yeah.
execute it and decipher what's happening.
This is uh, sort of tangentially related to that. Do you have any musicians? How about this? I'll ask this for a rhythm section player and another saxophone player. Do you have any in particular that you really enjoy playing with, that you feel like you really vibe with on a musical level?
Oh, I mean, yeah, so many. All my friends. It's hard to just say one because I feel like I wouldn't be giving the other ones justice. But I mean, yeah, a lot of my friends and people that I play with, and they all play differently, but they all have very strong musical personalities that I feel like are really fun to get into things with. Um, yeah, geez, I certainly Steve
Yep.
Fife on piano is one of my favorites. I love playing with Addison Fry too. Yeah, Jesus, there's so many. There's so many. I feel bad. Like I'm however many names I say, I'm gonna be kicking myself for not saying other
All
ones.
right. Uh,
Yeah. hmm
how about a few saxophone players, because this is a saxophone themed Discord and I should focus on the saxophone. How about some saxophone players that you like in playing with?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of my closest friends is Sam Dillon, and he's incredible, and we both grew up together on Long Island, so we've also known each other for a really long time. But there's something about when I play with him, like we don't have to even think about anything. Like just the sound, the intonation, the phrasing, it all just feels like it really clicks. So he's certainly one of my favorite guys to play with. Just because like that we know each other musically very, very well. So he knows what I'm gonna do. And he
Yeah,
knows and also sitting together in a saxophone section, like it's very easy, just sitting next to him and I feel like I can put the inflections and the pitch wherever I want it and he's gonna be right there under me, listening and supporting and helping it all to make it sound like whatever I did was the right thing to do.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? But yeah, there's a lot of people. I think yeah, another one of my good buddies, Paul Jones on tenor. I also feel that way about. Um, Andrew Gutowskis is one of my favorite Barrett players. I do so many different gigs with him. He's also in the 8-bit big band and a million other things. Yeah, Carl Maraghi is another one. I don't know. Like there's so many saxophone players. Both of the other guys I mentioned, Alejandro Aviles and Alex Array, are two of my favorite guys to sit next to on alto. Bielo for sure. Um, yeah, there's so many. I please, if I didn't mention your name, don't be. And you're actually watching this, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. I just forgot. I love everyone.
There's a myriad. You can't throw something without hitting a saxophone player in New York, is what I've been told and what I've seen. To be honest.
But I think so. A common thread about all these guys is they do have their own ways and they're very strong personalities in how they play, but they know when to rein it in and I think you have to be there's a certain ego thing, right? Like that you have to have when you play in order to feel like you're playing with conviction when you go to play or it's your turn to solo or whatever. But also the ego has to kind of chill out when like you're not the one that has to be right at the front, to say, okay, I'm going to follow this person. I'm going to hear how they're doing it and then figure out how to play under them or how to know, okay, it's not your moment to shine right now. And so like I think that's a really good thing as a musician in general, regardless of what instrument you play, but certainly as a saxophone player, and especially when you're playing in a section, to understand that like your second tenor part is not the end all be all
Yeah.
of this role right now. You're playing the backgrounds under a piano solo, and you're the second lowest voice in the saxophone section playing those backgrounds. Like, relax,
Yeah.
don't worry, you'll get your moment. It's just not right now, you know. For instance, so yeah, that quality is really important. Being musically generous, I guess you could say.
Okay. This is a question from Ace. How would you approach playing in a recorded studio environment in comparison to live performance spaces?
Okay, yeah. So it depends on a lot of things. I think generally when I'm playing live, although not completely, because there are plenty of live gigs that I'm sight reading on too. um, I think I'm gonna take a little bit more risks in a way. I shouldn't say that. That's not entirely right. But there's like a live energy and feeling that I feel like sometimes there's things I would go for live. I don't even like saying that. It's not necessarily true. Okay, let me say this. Scratch that. That's not really true. I think what I'm trying to say is that I'm affected by the fact that there's an audience and there's
Yeah.
an energy there. And I like that. I like feeling like I'm playing for people that are responding emotionally and we're all together in this moment right now and we're all playing. And so that makes me have this feeling like I'm gonna take it over the top, when that moment is called for,
Yeah.
at least, where that I don't feel that always happens as much in a studio just because of the nature of the beast,
Yeah.
But I try to trick myself when I'm in the studio to feeling like that energy is there. Like that still is the purpose of the music. I still want to make the people that are hearing it in their headphones when they finally listen to the album next year when it's mixed and mastered and everything that they're part of that same energy, So I guess you could say that I try to put that same live energy into recording, when that's the goal of the music. But the intensity can be there without you having to play a lot or play fast or loud or
Yeah.
any of that stuff, which I all like to do all of those things. But it's also good you can play softly and quietly with intensity too, and that can still really translate. And it can translate on a recording. So there's that. I think sometimes I like to not. I think when you're playing live, sound can vary and it can be harder to hear, and we as horn players tend to overblow more easily. Um, so I really try to back off a little bit more on my sound when I'm recording, and also in general, to be honest, because and I was speaking to Garzone about this too, because when I was studying with him, he was always telling me, he's like, Ange, back off, man. Like you don't need to play full on all the time. And man, he's so right. There's a point where I think if you push the saxophone too hard, things don't really get any louder. It just sort of gets worse sounding,
Yeah.
and I think when you kind of find where that wall is, but then you back off from there, you don't really lose a whole lot of projection. You just sort of gain more beauty and resonance and almost roundness to your sound. And to have that, and then to have that all the way from loud, double forte or whatever, and to still retain that when you're playing softly is really important. So I think when I'm recording, I try to be really mindful of not overblowing and to always play with a pretty sound and to not really feel like I'm pushing too hard or I'm playing blatty, because I think the saxophone especially records better when you don't push it too hard. Um, yeah, otherwise, like when it comes to like musically, um, same thing applies to both live and studio. I'm just if I'm sight reading something, I'm trying to find my role in what I'm doing. I'm trying to make sure I can hear everybody else well, both live and in the studio, so I can play. Like it's always a drag when you play volume in the studio, and that's not the volume of what your role is. So
Yeah.
like, oh, that was a background, but I played it forte. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. We'll take it down in the mix. Sure, but you have a different timbre when
Yeah.
you play that way.
Yeah.
It's a different vibe on it. So I think it's really good to aim to still play in the studio in the same levels and the same way that you would play the song live. Because really, you just want the mic to be capturing that. You want to play musically, and the microphones are just there
Yeah.
capturing you. You're not saying, "Oh, they'll Pro Tools it later," like, and that might be true, and for certain styles, like maybe that's a thing. But um, yeah, at least playing jazz or music like that, always try to make it as immaculate and execute it as if it was live. I think, I
Yeah.
hope that sort of answers the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is actually just a question from me. What advice would you give for like your first recording session? Just in
Yeah. Okay.
general.
I think, you know, don't you don't have to feel like you need to reinvent the wheel or like I said, even establish your artistic voice. If you want to record and you feel the desire to record, look at it like it's a snapshot in time. First of all, if you're feeling ready to record, it's because you're feeling musically inspired, and I bet that voice is already there in you anyway. So don't force it. Just go in, have fun, be prepared, make sure your charts are clear, the band knows them well, and just go and have fun and try not to worry about too much other than be in the moment musically and have a good time. I don't think you need to force it or think like, oh, like this needs to be just like Michael Brecker's first album. It needs to have that. Don't worry about that. There's so much music now that has been done, and the thing that's gonna make you you is already there. It's already just you being you. So just relax and play and be in the moment. I would also say, think about how you play on one song versus how you're going to play on the next song and how that translates over the course of the whole set. Because really, an album is a set of music. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to play every song the same way because that doesn't get very fun for the listener. They already heard you do that on the prior track. You know what I mean? So playing the music, I mean, playing the song and making how you play have something to do with that song. And then the next song, your improvisation, if there is any, has to do with that. And your improvisation has something maybe to do with the melody or it's inspired from that or comes from that. Um, but yeah, I think it's too bad when you hear, and I'm guilty of this. This comes from my own self reflection. Speaking too, is that you learn lessons the best when you hear that you fucked up, and then
Yeah.
you go back check it out. But I think it's like have a contrast. I think contrast is so important in like everything that you do musically. Loud is effective because it came from something soft. If it's all loud, what's loud anymore? It's just all loud, and then it becomes boring. If you play a really soft line and all of a sudden you sting one note, that means so much more,
Yeah.
and vice versa. If you play mostly loud, you can come in loud too on a solo, but then all of a sudden you come down. That means a lot. And so that contrast relative to your solo is the same thing when it comes to a track list, and picking the order of songs and how you play on those songs and pacing yourself and making it have variety. I
Yeah,
think that's all really important to think about too.
yeah. We probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. This
Hmm.
is a good one for, I think, especially college students like myself. How do you respond to times when you feel like you aren't playing as well as you normally do?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm human and, I'll get frustrated with myself. If I feel like I needed to play a good solo here or someone really cool was in the audience and, or man, I'm sitting next to Oates right now at the Vanguard and I just like botched this solo. Yeah, but I think you have to take the good with the bad because the fact of the matter is we are all human and no one's going to be 100% consistent. Reeds aren't consistent.
Yeah.
They're natural. Well, maybe you play synthetic reeds. They're pretty consistent. I don't know. I don't play synthetic reeds, but
No.
you get my dumb analogy. Is wood is a naturally occurring substance too. It's gonna be inconsistent
Yeah.
to a degree. It just is. That is what it is. So the best thing to do with reeds and with our own playing is just roll with it. Not every day everything is going to click perfectly. Some solos are going to be better than others, but that's just the nature of the beast. I think, like I was saying, stay positive and don't look to necessarily raise the top of your level. Also raise the bottom. So maybe even if your worst solo isn't so bad, even at the very worst, it's still going to be passable. And you'll notice that as that happens, the top kind of raises too anyway, just as a
Yeah.
result of that you know um so yeah, I think just try not to get too down on yourself. Accept the fact that people are inconsistent
Yeah.
and that's just the way it is, and look at the bigger picture. Maybe, well, I took not so great of a solo today, but you know what? I've been feeling generally better about how I play recently. Or, okay, I'm in a rut right now, but you know what? That's cool. Let me identify even that more easily what I think I can do and what do I need to work on. So don't just see, oh, I'm fucking up. Oh man, I'm terrible. What am I gonna do? Okay, no, you're not terrible. It's all good. What are you gonna do? Identify what you don't like. What did you not like about it? What could have felt better? And then come up with a way to address it so that way it doesn't keep happening or it happens less frequently, and turn it into a positive direction, spin it into a positive direction, because that's how you get better and that's how you keep making progress. Because every single person that has ever touched an instrument has had some point where they felt less good about whatever they did. It's the nature of the beast,
Yeah.
you know?
All right. I think one last question. If you do you have any advice for, this server is probably mostly consistent of sort of middle schoolers and high schoolers. Do you have any advice for students who are just starting to pick up music, how to remain inspired for such a long time that you end up doing this as a career?
Yeah, well, I think what I was saying about find the music that you like and whatever your instrument is, you can still learn a cool rock song or whatever that you heard online or on the radio on whatever instrument you play. Find a way to make it creative. Don't just think of it, oh, this is something I need to do for school, even though that might be true. And that's okay, and still do what you need to do for school. And guess what? Like, it might kind of not feel tedious, but if you get past those hurdles, it just winds up giving you more creative tools to work with in your own way, like learning scales and memorizing this and playing this wind ensemble piece that you find really boring. Like, there are still good things about doing all of that stuff that it's like, um, maybe some lifters like really love lifting weights, but I think probably the feeling of like struggling to lift weight isn't necessarily the most pleasurable for everybody. But if you do it enough, you know, um, you get stronger.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the same thing. It's like, um, try to find the positive in it. Try to realize that this is all a means to an end, if you want to be a musician. But at the same time, find ways to inspire yourself through it. Find the musicians that you like. It's so easy now. Like, you just go on the computer and search anywhere. For music that you like or musicians that you like. You don't know cool saxophone players to check out? Type in Google cool saxophone players to check out. Literally, you could type in those exact words and you're going to get some ideas and see. There's so many different ways that every single instrument can be played and different roles that it can play. So I think like, yeah, just dig around for what inspires you and remember that that's something that you could do if you want to, you know?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to leave it off. I really thank you for doing this, and I think everybody else probably thanks you for just
Oh yeah,
giving us some of
my
your time and some of your information. It's been
my pleasure.
really fun.
I hope something I said helps, I feel like it's good to hear myself say these things too. I'm like, yeah, right, Andrew. Remember, do follow your own advice, Andrew. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a lot of really good information. I'm gonna ask one silly question because I tried to get one of my friends to ask some questions, and this is the only one she would ask. What's your favorite flavor of Gatorade?
Oh boy. I mean, I'm not a huge Gatorade person, in general. Well, let's see. I guess maybe is it the lemon lime flavor? Is that the one?
It's like the
I like
like
that one.
yeah, lemon lime's good. That's a good flavor. I definitely
I
like
don't
it.
know. I'm not like a Gatorade guy, so this is not like a real answer. This is not like my honest opinion. Like you know what, Wes? Like I've sampled all the Gatorade flavors, and I really have to say that, but like far and away, like orange is my favorite. Actually, orange is a good one. I like orange too. Um, yeah, I don't know. I drink Gatorade maybe once a year. I'm sorry if your friend's like a big Gatorade drinker and is,
I
like
don't think
offended by
I don't think they are, to be honest. Do you have another
that.
sports drink of choice?
I don't really drink sports drinks, I guess. I'm like a water guy. H2O, baby.
You're better than
Right
I.
here.
You're better than I am.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
don't drink like a lot of, I was like a lot heavier in high school and I was like pretty chubby. I'm working my way back there now, but like I stopped drinking soda like when I was in my undergrad and I felt so much better instantly. Like so since then, like I try not to drink. I try to leave most of my caloric intake to food
yeah.
because I eat food like a lot of food. Ask people that I play in bands with. Like in one band I play with, they call me Two Plate Andrew because I eat two meals. There's a wedding band I play with that like the one of the main singers is a vegetarian, but every single time we play a gig, the venue always forgets she's a vegetarian and they always give her another regular meal. So everybody they just know to pass me whatever food they don't finish, and I'm that person. So to make up for eating so much, I'd say, all right, well at least let me not drink any extra
Yeah,
calories.
yeah, 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 yeah. That pizza place you
Yeah,
recommended in Astoria is very good. I wanted to
I'll let up.
go back last time I was up there. I just couldn't find the time. But
Yeah,
it was
everybody I send there is like, man, that's some of the best pizza I've ever had in my life.
I,
Um,
I mean, as a Floridian who, like, my family's from New York, so they constantly talk about how much better the pizza is in New York, and I found it difficult to believe them, I guess. And then I went to New York and I was like, oh, yeah, you're just right, I guess. Sorry that I doubted you. It just is better. We have good
Yeah,
Hispanic
I
food,
mean,
though.
I'm sure there's other good places. Whenever I meet someone from like Chicago or even Connecticut, they're all like, "Oh, we have the best pizza." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, maybe you do. I don't actually care. Like, I don't need to tell, oh, my state is the best pizza." I don't know. I've never had like really good pizza even in Connecticut. No, I've had good pizza in Connecticut, but I mean like whatever people consider like the best Connecticut pizza, I've never been able to fully compare it to like New York pizza and be like, "You know what, man? Nah, we still win. You're still
Yeah.
win," or whatever. Like I have zero like personal attachment
Yeah.
to whatever state has the best pizza.
Yeah.
But there's some really good pizza in New York for sure.
Some really good
That I would say.
some really good bagels, man. I had like an actual New York bagel. Actually, I had a New Jersey bagel when we went up there before we left to head home. We stopped in New Jersey to get bagels, and they're worth the hype, every bit of it.
Yeah, there's some pretty good bagels. I'm a bagel. I grew up on Long Island too, so. Long Island has good bagels also. Now, I'm hungry. I haven't even eat breakfast yet, so I think I might have to go to the bagel store.
I actually am probably going to go to the bagel store too. There's a bagel store near me that's not as good as New Jersey or New York, but it's a bagel. It's better than fucking
Yeah.
Panera or something.
Most of the places on the street, like I mean, like if you go to a bodega in New York City and get a bagel, all right, it's probably not going to be great. But if you go to any spot, like even for instance, there's a franchise called Brooklyn Bagel,
Hmm.
which is ironically still in Queens where I live here in Astoria too, but they're also sure they're in Brooklyn. That's like it's not even like a special like considered like a really fancy bagel shop, but their bagels are amazing, and that's just like one of the just like one random spot, you can go to. Um and there is even much better than that. So yeah,
Yeah.
the average level, that's what I'm saying, like, even the bottom level can be pretty good.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know? And when the bottom level gets better, the top level gets better too. So I'm bringing it back to music,
Yeah.
you know?
We have some Hispanic food. Just in general, Hispanic food in Florida can be like that, where like even sort of the worst Mexican you find is probably going to be better than like any Mexican you find in Georgia, probably. We have good Mexican food.
Yeah. And from what I've heard, like in New York City, it's not super happening.
I
I can't really compare it, but I don't know.
There's this place in near the Vanguard that had good tacos, like quite good tacos, very good Alba Store tacos. And then when I went back after when I came back, they had made it 21 and up, and I couldn't get my tacos, which was very frustrating. I was
21 and would they
Yeah,
serve alcohol?
it was a bar that just happened to have good tacos. I looked at the dude and I was just like, man, I am in like a suit right now with my saxophone on me. Do I look like the type who really wants to engage in heavy drinking right now, man? I just want a taco. And he wasn't
Hmm.
having any of that. He did not care for my plight. I had a similar experience at the Blue Note where they I bought some bar seats because the Blue Note charges $35 a seat for, and the bar seats were like slightly cheaper. So I got bar seats and I got there and they're like, well, if you want to sit at the bar, it's 21 and up. And I was like, dude, do I look like I want to drink, man? Like, I have my fucking Harry Potter glasses on. I have a saxophone holding a Sharpie. Like, I just want to meet Braxton Cook, dude. And he really didn't care. He threatened to throw me out if I kept arguing. So I had to
Oh boy.
step out. Yeah, just
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of tough. I guess these clubs are, they're definitely more designed with the over 21 clientele in mind
yeah.
because they want people to sit at the bar and drink. But you can still sit at a bar and order, unfortunately, a soda, which
Yeah,
I don't drink.
that's what I would have done. But they don't make any
You can
money off
also,
of that.
you can also ask them if they have Gatorade and
Yeah,
what flavors.
yeah. What
I wouldn't
flavors?
count on it, but you could ask.
I could ask. I bet Chloe would be happy to know if they had Gatorade at the Blue Note. All right, that's a good place to leave it off.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Well, hey, thanks again for letting me talk. Oh, also because I'm a shameless promoter, I have an album coming out Friday. If anybody here cares to check it out, um, yeah, it's coming out. It's just gonna be online, at least for now, so you can stream it on Apple Music and Spotify. It's gonna be called "Pull Up a Chair." And yeah, it's all music that I wrote inspired by basically being a dad over the pandemic and after, and just different songs that kind of represent different scenarios of that. So if anyone feels like checking it out or hearing like kind of like the latest of what I've been doing, you can check that out. It's going to be out this Friday.
I actually meant to ask about that, and it totally slipped my mind for some reason. Thank you for bringing it up.
I just literally
Yeah,
remembered right now
yeah.
too. I'm terrible at like saying check me out, but I remembered. It was like all
Gotta
right.
get it in there. I believe me, I'm as shameless of a shill as there possibly can be. Many a New York musician has been a victim of that, of me coming up to them and just haranguing them for like 10 minutes. So many people.
I mean, if you don't try, it definitely won't happen. So
It's been effective.
you gotta.
Somebody's got to shoot me down for me to stop because it's been working.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for giving us your time and your information. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure,
Of
Wes.
course. I'll talk to you again hopefully soon. Probably very
Sounds
soon.
good.
I might text you after this. All right. See you, man.
All right. Yeah.
See
Bye,
ya. Bye
everybody.
bye.